little bird tonight told me that somebody would like to be the captain.
The better part of the weekend, and indeed the early part of this week, the world's media focused on the tragedy of the Oceanos shipping liner which sank off the Transkei coast.
The Oceanos was first launched in France in 1952, originally named Jean Laborde. After going through many different owners and name changes, she was acquired by Epirotiki Lines of Greece in 1976 and was finally registered under the name Oceanos. She was a 153-metre long luxury liner, 7 decks high, designed to carry 550 passengers and 250 crew. The ship had a large open-deck swimming pool, multiple dining rooms, an onboard casino and a stage for performances. After years of operating out of Greece as a cruise liner, the Oceanos sailed to South Africa to take advantage of the untapped South African market. Few cruise liners operated in the area due to the extremely rough waters and the potential for piracy. The ship was chartered at the time by the South African company TFC Tours. On the 2nd of August 1991, after a week-long cruise, the Oceanos docked at the harbour in East London, South Africa, where a wedding was held on board. Despite wild weather conditions, the bride insisted that the wedding ceremony should take place at sea. An additional 100 passengers were picked up and the ship left the harbour for a short cruise. When the ceremony had been performed, the vessel returned to East London. The Oceanos was hardly the luxury liner that she had once been. In a state of neglect, it had loose hull plates, check valves stripped for repair parts after a recent trip, and a 10-centimetre hole in the watertight bulkhead between the generator and sewage tank. Passengers complained about strange noises and a strong smell of sewage on the lower decks during the previous cruise. Despite being advised on the numerous safety concerns, the ship was declared seaworthy. She was scheduled to set sail on the 3rd of August 1991 at 4 p.m. from East London to Durban. However, her departure was delayed due to the increasingly dangerous weather conditions. Meanwhile, Captain of the Oceanos, Yannis Avranis, was monitoring the weather. Instead of waiting it out overnight, Captain Avranis made the decision to set sail at 5 p.m. The Oceanos then departed on its final voyage from East London with 571 passengers on board. As the cruise officially started, the entertainment began. By the time the formal dinner and cocktail party got underway, the Oceanos was at the mercy of the raging sea. Food and drink were thrown from tables, and passengers were falling from their chairs. After a very rough dinner service, the passengers stumbled their way to the lounge for a music performance. Performing that night was Moss Hills, musician and guitarist, alongside his wife Tracy. As huge waves thrashed the ship, a piano broke from its hinges, slid across the stage, and crushed the drum kit. As the storm raged outside, the passengers grew increasingly concerned about the safety of the ship. Little did they know that below deck, things were quickly deteriorating. Water had started pouring in through the side of the ship from a water intake reservoir. It's believed that a freak wave had smashed into the ship, causing a massive leak. At 9:30 p.m, the following footage captured the moment the ship lost all power.
I want you to imagine, if you can, a long and
Panic set in amongst the passengers and crew while the emergency lights slowly flickered on. Moss Hills and magician Robin Boltman went onto the stage to try and keep the passengers calm while they anxiously awaited instructions. Cruise director Lorraine Betts instructed all the entertainers to assemble the passengers to the entertainment lounge as life jackets were handed out. However, nobody in particular really took charge. There was only silence from the captain. Out of frustration and curiosity, Moss Hills ventured below deck with his video camera to find out what was really going on. The following footage captured what he saw.
And right down below now, there's water everywhere. It looks like it's flowing in reasonably fast, but it's sloshing about from side to side. So I guess we're going down.
It was now around 11 PM, and there was still nothing from Captain Avranis. Crew who were desperately seeking instructions from the captain stated that he had shut down and was staring at them with a blank and empty look. Meanwhile, cruise director Lorraine, Moss and Robin began to lead women and children into the ship's 8 lifeboats, each designed to hold up to 99 people. However, they had no idea how to start the engines or even where the keys were. To their shock, some of the lifeboats had already been covertly claimed by the ship's crew. When passengers tried to enter the lifeboats that crew were on, they were turned away, with the crew claiming that they were already full despite being well below capacity. By midnight, most officers had sneakily abandoned ship, taking with them the best lifeboats. Senior officers and crew members were seen jumping into boats ahead of passengers and then launching those boats only half full. Outraged, entertainers Moss Hill, Robin Boltman, and director Lorraine, as well as a few remaining crew, took it upon themselves to rescue the remaining passengers. Terrified passengers huddled on the floor while the Oceanos was rocking violently. It was now around 1:30 AM, and only 3 lifeboats remained, despite more than 200 passengers still on board the sinking vessel. To make matters worse, the ship was listing too steeply to launch the last 3 lifeboats from the ship, leaving those who remained on board with no way out. Moss and Robin headed up to the bridge in search of the captain. When they made it up to the captain's deck, it was empty. There was only a radio going off in the background, frantically calling for the Oceanos to report back.
National Sea Rescue need a spare channel. Can you help over?
Moss jumped on the radio and desperately tried to send out a mayday when a freight ship came within range of the Oceanos. The captain of the freighter began hailing Moss with a barrage of questions, to which he could not answer. The freighter asked, "How many hours have you got left afloat?" Moss responded by saying he did not know. Frustrated, the freighter asked Moss what his rank was. Moss responded by saying, "I'm not actually a rank, I'm the guitarist." While the rescue operation conducted by the entertainers was underway, cruise director Lorraine spotted Captain Avranis. He was found trying to sneak into a lifeboat with his dog. Lorraine and other crew members grabbed him by the life jacket and yanked him back on board. The captain was caught twice more by crew attempting to hop into other lifeboats until he was dragged to the back deck, where he clung to a railing near the pool deck. Finally, at around 3 AM, the South African Defence Force had caught wind of the situation. Helicopter rescue squadrons were assembled and dispatched to the Oceanos. However, they were still more than 4 hours away as passengers were being ushered out onto the deck. Just when all hope seemed lost, they heard the sound of helicopter blades beating the air above them. They looked up to see a Navy helicopter hovering above the deck of the ship. The helicopter could not land on the vessel, so Navy diver Paul Wiley began lowering down from the chopper on a harness. The weather was so rough that Paul was being thrashed about, so Moss found some rope, tied it around his waist and some railing, grabbed Paul as he came down, essentially turning himself into an anchor. Two choppers worked from the front and the back of the ship, hauling 20 passengers at a time via a harness, flying them 5 kilometers to shore, unloading them and refueling before returning to the ship for more. While the rescue operation seemed to be going quite well in the circumstances, a man dressed in white approached Navy diver Paul. A man who, in an attempt to cut in front of women and children, was demanding to be taken next. He grabbed a harness while no one was looking, strapped himself in, and was carried to safety. Paul would later discover that that man was captain of the Oceanos. The Navy divers employed a couple able-bodied hands to assist, including Moss, and gave them an extremely quick crash course on how to conduct the lift. The exhausted assistants, with an enormous new responsibility, accidentally sent some passengers slamming into the hull of the ship as they screamed. It was utter chaos. One man lost his grip and fell more than 200 feet from the harness into the sea. The team was losing the race against time. When they realized that they could not haul all remaining survivors up into the choppers in time, rescuers managed to launch one of the remaining lifeboats into the ocean. Those remaining had no choice but to jump. Suddenly, a voice comes through the radio to magician Robin Boltman. It was the captain, calling safely from the shore, asking for a report on the rescue operation. Finally, after all remaining passengers were rescued, the remaining crew, helping hands, and the entertainers left the ship as the Oceanos was on the brink of completely sinking. Shortly afterwards, the Oceanos dramatically began its vertical descent, sliding nose first to the bottom of the sea. Back on land, the rescuers received a hero's welcome.
The hero, baby! Absolute hero!
Incredibly, it turned out that not one person was lost that day. All 571 passengers and all crew had remarkably survived the disaster. Navy diver Paul Wiley later received South Africa's highest Medal of Honor. The press labelled the rescue a miracle and hailed the heroes on board that ensured the rescue of all passengers. The same was not said for the crew members, senior officers and the captain, who were slammed by reporters and the public as cowards. The captain made the following train wreck of a statement after the disaster.
When I order abandon the ship, doesn't matter what time I leave. Abandon is for everybody. If some people they like to stay, they can stay.
The captain's excuse was that, due to a lack of communications on the ship, he could better communicate the rescue from shore. It was later discovered that the Greek company that owned the Oceanos had a history of maritime mishaps, with 3 of its ships having sunk over a span of just 3 years at the time. A small explosion caused one of their ships, the Pegasus, to partially sink in June of 1991 just a couple of months before the Oceanus. Another ship, named Jupiter, sank in 1988 after colliding with an Italian ferry car, killing 2 passengers. When he was asked about a report that he had gone into hiding to avoid angry passengers, Captain Avranus replied from his hotel in Durban, stating, "Hide? Of course not. Why should I hide myself? I am not a killer. I cannot understand why passengers are upset because they are alive. This is unbelievable." Captain Avranus later appeared before a South African Marine inquiry to speak to the disaster. He received extensive media coverage as an example of unprofessional behaviour whilst in command. The captain and some of the crew were later convicted of negligence by a Greek board of inquiry for fleeing the ship without helping the passengers. The captain was never incarcerated, and Epirotiki even gave him command of a ferry until his retirement. Captain Avranus's emergency management was again widely cited after the Costa Concordia disaster in 2012, an incident which drew undeniable similarities. 3 years later, in 1994, Moss was playing guitar on another cruise ship named the Achille Lauro. During the cruise, the ship caught fire and began to rapidly sink in the Indian Ocean. Moss used what he learned on the Oceanus and again helped passengers to safety. Despite having survived 2 major cruise ship disasters, Moss later went on to work as a cruise director himself. The rusting wreck of a former luxury liner, the Oceanus, now lies at a depth of around 95 meters below the surface of the Indian Ocean. Thanks for watching. A lot of work went into the making of this video, so if you enjoy this type of content, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Cheers, bye.